Hey everybody, so 2023 was a really good year for reselling for me and Mr. Pish Posh. Of course, I like reselling, so I like every year. But I decided to pull together our top 23 items that sold in 2023 in our online reselling business. Things that sold on Ruby Lane, on eBay, on Poshmark, and Etsy, things like that. So I last year did the top 22 items that sold in 2022. This year we're doing the top 23. You can see where this is going. Obviously at some point I have to stop. Otherwise this video will be like 3 hours long. So we are going to start right away. Not in any very specific order, but I'm trying to share with you items that sold for $100, at least $100 or more. Number one was this Butterick 6015 sewing pattern. You know, I love my sewing patterns. I do have some videos about that. This was a size 18, which is a nice size for vintage patterns. It was called the walkaway dress. And it had been popular in the past on, sewing challenges and YouTube videos and things like that. The pattern itself is from the 50s. And this was a vintage original pattern. They did make a reproduction of this pattern, but people are still looking for that original 1950s pattern. It was called the walkaway dress. It was because you could make it for breakfast, start it right after breakfast, walk away in it for luncheon. So anyway, that's how it was kind of advertised, as just a fast pattern. And I sold this pattern for $99.99. Number two, totally different genre. We have a jacket. It's a military style jacket, probably Vietnam era. It's called a fishtail parka, an extreme cold weather parka. And the number is M65 is what you want to look for. It's called a fishtail because of the style of like the tail is split, and it's a little bit longer than the front. It should come, they come with a hood, they come with a liner, because this was just like the parka. It wasn't heavy duty, even though it's for cold weather, but there is a liner that goes underneath. Both times I have found this jacket, I have only ever found just the outer liner and have sold it for 100, 150 or so, like that. So this particular one I got at, that's what I was going to say. I can't remember exactly. I got one at Goodwill and I got one at a yard sale. And I'm thinking this one is the one I got at Goodwill, because the year before I had sold the one I had found at the yard sale and it had sold super quickly. So I saw it at Goodwill, recognized it, bought it, sold it. This also sold for $100. I didn't have the liner. I didn't have the hood. Okay, again, a whole nother category. Number three, this is a Singer darning embroidery attachment. I always just kind of double check sewing machine attachments that seem a little bit different, especially if they come in their own box. You know, maybe they weren't included in like a kit, or the attachments that maybe came with your sewing machine, but they were purchased separately. And so I saw this at the thrift store, just a local chain thrift store, and it was a few bucks, so I grabbed it. There's a version of this that was made specifically for Singer featherweight sewing machines, which that's a whole nother subject, but Singer featherweight sell for really, really good money. So any attachments for them also sell for good money. This one can still be used on the featherweight. There's videos and tutorials about that. So it still has a fairly good value on it. I sold this one for $107.99. Now, this next one was a little bit tricky to explain. I just decided to include it anyway. This is number four. And it was a kind of a bulk lot that I bought. Here's a picture of, I had done a video on this pottery a long time ago. It's not the greatest video. But anyway, I had found this large amount at the thrift store of Ken Edwards Mexican pottery. And I paid about $4 per plate, large plate, $2 for the smaller plates. Now, I did start selling these in 2022, but I sold the bulk of them in 2023. I would say about $400 worth of these dinner plates sold in 2023. I sold them mostly on eBay, a couple of smaller pieces sold on Posh. And yeah, so just keep an eye out for Ken Edwards pottery, especially dinnerware. I sold everything individually. A few people bought more than one piece. And the pieces, they're all kind of unique. And ones that had maybe a little bit more unusual, you know, because a lot of them have birds and everything. But if you have one that has an owl, or you have one that has a deer, if it has something a little bit more unusual in it, you'll sell for higher prices. And so yeah, I don't have any of it left. It's all sold. Okay, let's go back to another clothing type item. This is number 5, and we are going to talk about a pair of Carhartt pants. The number, every Carhartt has a tag inside with kind of like a code, and then a code for the color. So these were B136, and then the color was CGR, which is cement gray. The color can play a role in the value of vintage Carhartt. And that's the main point. These pants were vintage. They were double knee, which is always something that is good for Carhartt pants. And they were made in the USA. So they sold for $124.99. We'll have another Carhartt item in a little bit, but vintage Carhartt still seems to be going strong. So just kind of, you know, take a look at what you find out there that's Carhartt, especially the older stuff. And then this next one, number 6, is a World War II era British Army pith helmet. So, you know, I couldn't believe, like, it looked like a costume piece possibly. I found it at Goodwill, just hanging with the rest of the hats. And I looked under, and it was kind of made paper mache, and you could see some of the writing was in like an Indian alphabet. And anyway, it was just a very interesting, unique piece, and it was in really, really good condition. And so we sold that one for $120. Just going through these fairly quickly. I had given, you know, all of these, I do what sold videos all year long, every week. And I do talk about my sales and my good sales. So some of you subscribers, these aren't new to you. But if you're new here, feel free to hit the subscribe button. I do share my solds all the time. And I share more details if there's anything really interesting about them. We're gonna go over to Etsy for number 7. I meant to look this up. You know how you have like a name in your head pronounced a certain way, but because you're a reseller who stays at home all the time and doesn't talk to anybody, you like don't know exactly how to pronounce it. But anyway, here's the poster, and the artist is it Nagel? Is it Nagel? Is it Nagel? Is it Nagel? I can't remember. Anyway, this was called The Book. It's from 1985. I found it at Goodwill, and it was in like a poster frame, but we took it out of the poster frame, we listed it, and then we sold it shipped, rolled up. So it was not that intimidating to get that shipped. And it actually went overseas to France. And I mean, this is so iconic, 80s looking poster. You know, I don't know, it always reminds me of 80s hair salons, but there is a big following for this art, and it sold for $145 in one of our Etsy shops. Number 8, we're back to the Carhartts again. So this is the Carhartt, kind of like top of the line vintage Carhartt piece that everyone is looking for. It's the Carhartt Detroit jacket. And as you can see, I mean, I know these pictures are kind of small, but this one has a logo on, just for a local like lumber yard or something like that in our area. And it's still sold with the logo for $127.49. So again, this one was, the code was JOI and then BLK just for black. And like I said, has the logo. Without the logo, they are $200, $300, something like that dollars. Vintage Carhartt Detroit jackets. Let's go back to Etsy for number 9. Swag lamps are something that you want to keep an eye out for. Vintage swag lamps. This first one has an amber colored glass, amber orangish colored glass, and we had been kicking around with this thing for a long time. But anyway, you know, sometimes just there's those items that are take a little bit more effort to get photographed, to get them hung somewhere, all that kind of stuff. And so Mr. Pish Posh tackled that this year. Sold this one for $245. Now the colored glass ones really have good selling value in them, but don't discount clear ones as well. We also sold, I'm going to give you a 2-for-1 in this one. We also sold this clear glass double swag for $135. Also, both of those were on Etsy. Okay, number 10 is a little bit more of a recent one, and this was made in Norway. The brand is Acorns. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, Ekornes. And it was their stressless kind of furniture line, and this was a little side table that I think you attach to the side of like your couch or a chair. And I found that at the thrift store. It was in the bin that hadn't been put out yet. And I snagged that. I saw Made in Norway, snagged that. It was new in the box, sold it for $149.99. And it went to Hawaii, it made it there, and everybody was happy. Okay, so let's not forget Poshmark. Poshmark is probably our second platform for the amount of sales and the amount of money that we make. I ended up selling this pair of Louis Vuitton, ooh, fancy, ballet flats for $200. And believe it or not, these were just on the shelf at Goodwill. And I took my chance on them. I think Goodwill did have them marked for like 20 bucks or something like that. But I was just shocked that they didn't put them in, you know, like they're online. So maybe they were not, either it slipped by somebody or they didn't want to try to figure out whether it was authentic or not. I don't know. Anyway, I figured out they were authentic. They were a little bit of an older style, and they sold on Poshmark for $200. Now, number 12 is everybody's favorite creepy doll. If you remember this from my haul videos, I think, and what sold, is this Little Miss No Name. And I had found 2 of these at a yard sale this summer for $6 for both of them. This one had the original dress. It was missing some other things, but it had the original dress, and so it sold for $150, $149.99. And the other one sold for a little bit less. She didn't have the original dress. So yeah, good return on investment. I saw those big eyes staring at me across the garage, and I was like, ooh, 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 ooh. Not something I would collect, but I know people are looking for them. Okay, so let's move on to number 13, and this was a new brand to me, and I will explain a little bit later where I got this shirt. It's part of a bigger story, but I just wanted to share this brand to start with. The brand was BC Ethic. Some of the other information on the tag, it was La Rocca, London, Vince Ray, Hard Rock Casino. It was a shirt, Hard Rock Casino. It was a, you know, it's a very rockabilly looking type shirt. I didn't recognize the brand. I had never seen that brand before, and I just saw the theme and the loudness and everything like that. And so I'll talk about it in a minute where I picked up that shirt. But this shirt sold for $160. So gotta love that. I did pay $15. I will tell you about that in a minute. So let's stick with clothing. Moving on to number 14, we have this leather coat that I just picked up at my local thrift store. It was Bonnie Cashin for Sills, and it was this beautiful mint green coat, and it sold so fast. And yes, of course, whenever anything sells fast, you're like, I underpriced it, but whatever. It had some damage. It had some, you know, picks, like scratches and things like that on the sleeve. I don't even remember what I paid, 10 bucks, 5 bucks, something like that. And it sold for $149.99. I was totally happy with that. I hope the buyer was super happy with it as well. Okay, now let's pop over to Ruby Lane. I looked for my top sale on Ruby Lane in the past year. I do have videos about selling on Ruby Lane, and I will have another video coming up soon about selling on Ruby Lane in 2024, and if things have changed or anything like that. So that is coming up. This was a brooch. It was by Trifari, and it says Crown Trifari because it was a specific mark by Trifari that has a crown over the T, and it was only used during a certain time period. So that helps you date when the brooch was made. But this was a Kingfisher brooch, and it was part of the Birds of Fashion line. Now, I found an ad for this Birds of Fashion line in gold tone that came out in 1964. So I don't know exactly when the silver version came out. The silver version was a little bit more rare even than the gold one. And I think there was some enameled versions of it too that came out later. But in any case, this sold for $292. So not bad for a little bird brooch that's not gold, it's not silver, it has no precious stones or anything like that, just costume jewelry. Now, I picked this up at one of our local thrifts, does a jewelry sale once a year. Last year they did it April 1st, so I'm hoping they're going to do another one this spring. Looking forward to that. It's so exciting. Anyway, it's just jewelry. They just save all their jewelry for the whole year. They put some stuff in their little thrift store, but not a ton. And they just kind of save it up. And it's in Ritzyville, right? I mean, it's kind of like the town that is the most swanky in Montana, like in our area of Montana. And so you get some good stuff and you get some good vintage stuff. So that's where I picked that up. It was $2 or $3. I don't remember exactly. And like I said, it sold for $292. Next one, number 16, not that long ago. This was my exciting denim jacket sale. Big Smith Buckaroo. It was from like the 50s or 60s. It was distressed and it was beat up and it had holes and all sorts of things, but we still sold it for $160. And if you remember that What Sold video, I sold it to a movie star, but I did not reveal their name out of concerns for their privacy. But it was a movie star who's been around for a little while, and he collects denim. I found that out with a little Google search, and yeah, so basically he sent me this offer and I was happy to take it. $160. I paid like $5 at a little thrift store that was going out of business, has since reopened, but back then it was the summer when they were going out of business and she was just trying to clear some things out. So that's what happened there. Okay, number 17 is another item I talked about in one of my videos, and I've talked about this brand in my knife video, in my utensils video, and that is Cutco. So this is not the biggest return on investment sale. It did, the set of knives did sell for $213, but I had to pay $100 at the thrift store for these knives. They were originally $200 at the thrift store in the case, and I waited till half price day. I happened to be going by. I said, let's go see. And I figured, you know what, at least they're a for sure sale. I am willing to pay up a little bit if I know it's a for sure sale and you're going to make some profit. So, you know, whatever I made at the end, by the end of that, $80, $90, easy listing, and a for sure sale. So I was totally fine with that one, but not the biggest ROI, you know, not like a brooch for $2 selling for $300, right? Made, you know, it sold over $200, but profit is a different thing. So keep that in mind as you listen to resellers on YouTube. Okay, next one is number 18, this hand-carved Black Forest antique box. Actually found it at the same thrift store as I got the Cutco knives, and these were, this was just on the shelf. I kind of spotted it. I think it was $8. And when I opened it and I saw the velvet inside, I was like, oh, this is old. I could tell it was really old. It did have some damage, but we were able to sell it for $225. And I don't know, just the longer you do this and the more you handle vintage and the more you are at thrift stores and go poke around antique malls, and you just kind of start to be able to tell exactly if, like when things are old, you can just tell. Okay, number 19, this is where we're going to talk about where that earlier shirt had come from. So I did a video, I'll put a picture up of the video itself, the thumbnail, and it was, I've talked about it many times on the channel, this interesting little place that I thrift for resale in town. It's the county treasurer's office has an ongoing estate sale. And so I did a video one time, I explained that. One time I went in there and they had a bunch of Hawaiian shirts. So my Hawaiian shirt haul is number 19. Basically what I'm going to talk about. So I had gotten Nat Nast and Jam's World, Rain Spooner. You know, here's the big pile of shirts that I had gotten that day. So I think I had gotten, if I remember correctly, about 29 shirts. A lot of them were in dry cleaning plastic still. And so I did ask the woman running the sale, I said, if I bought all these shirts, would you, what kind of discount can I get? They were all priced at $25 a piece, and she offered me $15 a piece. So I did pay about $440 or something like that, because I think I got some other things too, for those shirts. So that was quite a big investment. I was kind of like, I had this big pile I'm carrying out to the car, and I got to the car and I'm just like, I just spent that much money, right? But I had, it was based on knowledge. I knew Jam's World shirts were really collectible. These were all vintage and everything. So this shirt right here is a Robert Graham. That was one of the shirts in that pile. And it was a limited edition. So not all Robert Graham shirts are going to sell for this much. It was limited edition and it sold for $249.99. So between that, the one I showed you earlier, the BC Ethic, I sold one of the Jam's World for $100. I was easily back in the clear again, right? I had paid off my investment. Everything else there was gravy, right? And so most of the Jam's World shirts sold for $60 or $70. I think I might have like one or two left of that pile. The Rain Spooners took a little bit longer. I wouldn't have paid $15 for a Rain Spooner, but because I bought in bulk, I was able to get a good low price on all of them. So I don't regret having added the Rain Spooners to the pile, but I'm still profiting on those, just not as much. So anyway, Jam's World, limited edition Robert Graham, definitely something to keep an eye out for. Okay, we're almost there. Number 20, this was not that long ago. This was a American Trumpet that had belonged to a family member, and we sold this one, not knowing hardly anything about musical instruments, for $206.24. Next item, number 21, was also something I know very, very little about. So thanks to Mr. Pish Posh for handling this one and researching it. This was a bunch of electronics were given to us. It's a Kenwood transceiver, and it is, according to Google, a transceiver is a transmitter and a receiver of communication. Came with a microphone. $285.91. And, kind of a random number. I think the person was trying to make it an even 300 once they included shipping. Now, my favorite ones I have left for the last, and that is number 22, was this shirt, vintage plaid shirt by Arrow, and the line of it was called Chevella. It was made out of rayon. It was a shadow plaid. These are just very collectible. They're from the 50s and the 60s. This was in really good condition. The buyer already had a couple of these in his collection and he wanted to add to it. This sold for $300. So I just picked this up at Goodwill in the men's shirts. And I just, you know, I love sales like that. I love when I can combine vintage with profit. Anyway, and get a collector something that, you know, they've been looking for. Now, the very last one, have you guessed it, is my favorite. Number 23 was the Rookwood Pottery Crow Tile Trivet that I found not that long ago, just at my local thrift store, sitting there on the table for like $4, and it was half off that day, so $2, and it sold for $350. Okay, so those were my top 23 sales of 2023. I hope they help you. I hope maybe you learned something from them, or just kind of see the possibilities that are out there, out among us. I noticed as I was going through this that quite a few of my really good finds were from Goodwill. So even though, you know, we might complain about prices, we might complain about things like that, there still can be really good items, and you know, sometimes you have to pay up a little bit for them, but the more you know about what to list and what to sell, you know, the more you can make those types of decisions. So like I've said, we talk about our sales every week. We also do some deep dive research videos on this channel. And then we share some of the things that we're picking up along the way while we're thrifting to resell as well. So like I said, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment down below of which of the 23 items that you like the most, or share with me what you feel your top sale was for 2023. As always, thanks everybody for watching, and we will talk to you later.